if you're a dunker and you want to bolster your jump training progress, in this episode we're going to talk about 8 things that can help your progress with jump training. My name is Juan. This is Darshil. We're gonna get right into it. So the first thing is something that most of you guys, it would be. This is like one of the best things to have if you want to become a good dunker, and that is low rimming. Having a basketball rim in your backyard or wherever, if you can go to a park and you can find a lower rim, being able to dunk on that. One, it's fun. Two, you can practice your skills. Three, it translates very well to actually dunking on a 10-foot hoop. When you reach the vertical that you can reach a higher vertical to be able to dunk on that height. Someone like Daniel Dacey, if you haven't checked out our podcast before, he's talked about how he practiced a lot of low rimming, and he was able to actually translate that into his when he's now able to dunk on 10 feet with a higher vertical. Now he can do stuff like off the walls. He's done windmills. He's done off the backboards, things as such. So that actually does help translate into that. Darshil, what's your experience with that? Because I know we've had you just had your update podcast. We've been talking
Yeah,
about like you've been doing a lot of lowering really recently.
yeah. So for one, we actually had a podcast very recently where we did talk about why rim heights and stuff mattered, and we did actually go a little bit into low rimming there as well. But with my personal experiences of low rimming, especially in the last few weeks where I've had more access to it compared to like when I was in college, it is a big game changer in terms of understanding certain things. Like my accuracy of where I throw my lobs now is a lot more accurate than it used to be when I was just doing it on 10-foot rims because I know exactly where to send it and I don't have to think about sending it too high. I have to think more about the accuracy more so than anything else. Sending it high is more so just the natural occurrence of me just going up at rim heights instead of just doing it all at once. So when I
Mm,
segment it into not just the whole thing, but into just thinking about accuracy, that actually got my lobs to get a lot better. I got more consistent with it, and I'm getting close to, or I'm getting makes on relatively higher lower rims than I used to in general in terms of how consistent I am because I'm doing that. And just in general, right? Like Juan said, if you can get really good at like the skill of any dunk on a low rim, it translates to when you're jumping higher, you're able to do those dunks because you have the skills acquisition. You just need to be able to jump higher with the ball.
mm-hmm. Yeah, and then when you're dunking on those low rims, when I used to try and practice it a little bit more, well, when I did practice a little bit more on low rims, you realize like how hard some of the trick dunks are and that you actually need to know how to manipulate the ball in the air. Those two things, manipulating the ball in the air, that's where it gets difficult and that's where you need to rep that out to be able to actually learn how to dunk like a professional. So yeah,
And it's,
and
I think,
yeah, go ahead.
and it speaks to it definitely because I think for people, for like longtime followers, for me, you guys might know that I used to do a lot of low rimming and I was decently good at it. I wasn't the best. I couldn't do certain dunks that should be easy to do if I could do other dunks. But I've done like at least on low rims, I've done off-road scorpions, I've done 365 wordies, debatable 720. That's something that I think I might have to just say is a 540. I'm not sure. But back in those days when I was practicing it constantly, I could do those kinds of spins. But you need to be consistent with it because in these days when I'm trying to do spin dunks now, I leak a lot of energy because I have to actively think about my spin instead of it just being intuitive. The goal of low rimming is really to make any action that you do, whether it's how you manipulate the ball, like Juan said, how you move or position yourself, become more intuitive for yourself so that you're more consistent in terms of what you're doing. And
Exactly.
I think, and for me, especially with spins, since I haven't seriously done them since after my ankle sprain, it's really hard. If and you just need to get through that stump and just keep going and understand through every session what you need to fix so that it gets better and better every time you go. That's how I first got into three. Even when I first started low rimming, my 360s were around or my spins were around like that same kind of awkward quality of losing a lot of energy. but it was just getting consistent more over time that got me to the point where I got pretty good at them.
Hmm. Yep. Makes sense. It all makes sense. Yep. That's how you get better right there. So, yeah. And the second thing that will help improve your vertical, like a tool that could help improve your vertical, is having a device to test your vertical. The most affordable option right now is to just make your own. Jayden has done that. I know we just had a podcast with Dylan Stone. He's done that. Or I don't know if it's like a if he made it or if it's like somewhere like I don't know exactly. But I saw he tested like 11 on that. Um, and yeah, and I actually do have a vert trainer myself, and I was able to test months back. This was on like a very fatigued day. I got like a 34-inch vertical. Um, but it's very good. So my experience with it was that you really need to dial in one your jump technique to be able to maximize the amount of force you're putting up, and it's a skill to touch that bell. Like, and the main thing is timing. Main thing is timing, and then being able like optimizing your technique and having a good technique while being able to produce more. Well, having the technique to be able to allow you to produce as much force as possible. Then the skill is also where to jump and how to time the when you're touching the bell in the air, because that's where like again, it's like you get two things, you got to mix it in one. Like with it's the same thing with like learning actual dunks. Like with the East Bay, you gotta like when you like miss it, or if you don't get like a good attempt, you see things like you see the little things like, oh, you're slapping the ball. Oh, like I need to kind of move my hand in a different position to get a better transfer. So it's like those little things that are like the small pieces of the puzzle that make that one big puzzle into like whatever, like those little things in the East Bay that create the East Bay. It's the same thing with like testing your vertical. So it's actually a very useful tool, and it's also obviously useful because of Pearson's law. Um, Again, talking about the like what we talked about in the podcast where we were talking about measuring rims, you are going to have to try to produce more force, because when you have a goal, you got to be like, okay, you got to think of what to dial in each time to then reach that specific goal. And then, yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. If Darshil, you have anything to say about that?
So for me, as many people know, and infamously some people know as well, I don't really have any real concrete vert testing modality right now, at least. And that might change in the future, especially with certain life situations that have gone great for me in the last few days or so. But I'd say that the only experience I've had is basically just there's like a club fair I did once, right? Where they basically had a Vertex setup, and it's like the traditional ones that they had, like the red, blue, blacks or some shit like that. And they had it set up on a uneven surface, right? So give it what take it as you will from there, right? But I tested once, or I tested technically twice on that day in terms of my vertical and stuff, and I believe, and this was on an uneven surface, so I don't fucking know, man. But it was around like a 911 touch or so, 911 10-foot touch on my second try. But I definitely understand what you're like saying in terms of like the fact that touching the bell or touching the vertex in this both of them require like the skill and timing to be able to maximize the amount of tabs that you're or tabs or bell that you're hitting. Like I saw that like with my first and only time that I used a vertex. It's like, damn, this thing is actually harder than it looks in terms of being able to maximize what I need to get out of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%.
But
Yeah,
keep in mind
definitely harder than it
when I
looks.
tested either of those numbers, I'm pretty sure that that those tabs were not even at all, or like the
Yeah,
vertex wasn't even at all, and that's important. That might be something we
yeah,
need to talk
100%.
about later.
Yeah, I mean, not for sure. Like you definitely, that's like the vert trainer has like that little tool where you like spin it so then it like leans like more like upwards just in case if it does end up leaning that way.
Yeah.
Um, that's more for like very very official memberships measurements. Um, when you want to actually get an official measurement, you see what they did at the dunk camp event with Isaiah Espinoza. They like literally like they make sure they get his reach right. They make sure he's wearing the same shoes in those reach. or in that when he's testing his reach, they measure with the tape measure the before and after the vertical that or the height that he touched to confirm his official vertical. So something like that, it's like if you're gonna test like on a day, like like not like you got some people watching, but it's not like an official like event. It's not gonna be more or less like an official vertical. Like you could say like someone like Tony Crosby's vertical or Dak's recent 51 apparent 51-inch vertical test. Like you could say that's not official because it's like there's no one around. It's not like stuff like that. Um, and plus you don't know like the exact measurements or whatever. But obviously it's clear that they're around there. It's like they tested it, whether it's like even if it's like a little like few like centimeters off or whatever, it's like they still got up
Yeah,
there, like, and they're gonna retest too. Those two guys with Isaiah Espinoza are gonna retest this dunk camp. We're gonna see who has the highest vertical. That's gonna be very interesting to
right.
see. But
Imagine we do like
but
a like
huh?
not a watch party, right? But just I guess reviewing dunk camp when it happens.
That 100%, bro. They about to put Isaiah in the dust, bro. Isaiah Rivera. Nah, but honestly, nah. Isaiah Rivera's feat of hitting 50.5 is definitely a lot. Like it's more
It
impressive than that one
yeah,
was more inspiring than any of those other guys because of how hard he had to train for it.
like yeah, it speaks to the fact that like Isaiah started off with. I mean, some people think it's slight. Like if you're taking like the whole span of the population, Isaiah's starting vertical at 24 inches is actually above average. But for like dunking, it was very average. For like us dunkers, it was very average. And the fact that he got to like a 50.5 through hard work and through a decade plus of training, it kind of just speaks to the
Yeah.
fact that like your genetic start isn't going to determine your genetic ceiling.
Yeah, and it's crazy because now you do see the difference though. Like with people like Donovan, with people like Tony, with people like Isaiah Espinoza, those guys are all young, like very
Yep.
young. So that shows like the genetics, like it gives you a starting point, that's for sure. Um, but man, like that's why Isaiah's feat was a lot more inspiring. He honestly showed like people what's like possible. So yeah, nah, he's got a good story. But anyways, next thing is caffeine. If you haven't watched our podcast, we talked very in depth about caffeine and like what kind of specific nuances you should like, what kind of specific things you should keep in mind when you want to use caffeine. Because obviously you don't want to use it too much, you don't want to use it too little. What time do you use it during the day? So check out our podcast if you haven't already. But caffeine is definitely very useful for when you are training or when you didn't get enough sleep or when you want to try and jump as high as possible. Maximize the gains in the moment of the session or training or jump session or training session that you are having because obviously the effects of caffeine, higher heart rate, more blood flow, whatever the fuck. You're have energy and you're gonna go crazy. Energy drink, caffeine pills, coffee, whatever you take, it's always gonna be beneficial to take some form of caffeine if you don't already take it too much to the point where you have a tolerance. You definitely don't want to build up a tolerance to that.
Yeah,
Just so you, yeah, yeah,
I'd say that if you are going to use caffeine, I don't think we mentioned this actually in the caffeine podcast, right?
yeah,
But if you are going to use caffeine, don't rely on it on every single day of training.
yeah. No, 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 no. Definitely not every
You're
single day.
gonna develop a tolerance. So at least if you can, take like a day, 2 or even 3 days off of caffeine. And that's probably gonna
Yeah,
help you a lot more than just doing it all the time. So
yeah,
gonna have to
100%.
you're gonna have to take more in order to be able to get more out of it.
Yeah, you got to
And
use it
that
sparingly.
exactly. And it's like you need to make sure that like your nutrients that you're getting into your body are still dialed in because caffeine can only be so helpful. In some cases, it actually could be detrimental if you don't have like the proper nutrients with you. I think in my personal experience, when I didn't have like enough electrolytes in my body as well as enough carbohydrates, and I had a lot of caffeine in my system, that actually screwed me up a lot. It actually gave me a lot of issues. So
Mm.
it's important that you have things dialed in, even if
Yeah.
you are using any type of energy drink or caffeine.
Yeah, and just like it's also like an individuality type of thing. Like some
Yeah.
people will respond to caffeine worse than others. I respond very generally to caffeine, but sometimes you can have gastrointestinal issues like headaches, things like that.
Yeah.
Which again we talked about in our podcast, so we're not gonna go too deep into that. But yeah, definitely an individual thing. Definitely something you got to figure out on your own how to use caffeine, or maybe if you shouldn't use it at all, because sometimes like you know the adrenaline the best form of adrenaline, second best is caffeine, the first best is environment. 100%. 100% it's environment. I've experienced it. Darshil's experienced it. Environment is the most important thing when it comes to adrenaline. So, yeah, and being able to dial in all the energy and like all the energy, maybe even nervousness, whatever, nervousness, excitement, to dial that in into what you've been practicing, that's where some of the best performances come from. So yeah, and also bonus because I just thought of this creatine. Creatine is definitely going to help you. Um, I don't. We should do research and do like a podcast about that.
Well, I guess the TLDR, right, from what I remember with
Yeah,
creatine, is
yeah.
that creatine basically makes it so that most processes, essentially, when you have our bodies basically have ADP, right? And we have to have certain things to be able
ATP,
to create, no, ADP,
ADP.
and we have to add another phosphate in order for it to become ATP, right? In order to be able to do that, we need energy.
I didn't know
We
that.
need to have we need to have energy, right? Most of the time, you get
Uh,
energy from carbohydrates, but creatine almost works in the sense that it uses the water that you have as a part of creation for that energy. I'm not exactly sure the exact science for it, but I remember that ATP synthesis tends to increase as a result of creatine consumption. And we could talk a little bit more about it and kind of
yeah,
go a little bit more in a deeper dive into creatine, but there's a huge difference between when I was on it versus when I was off it. And
yeah, 100%.
I've experimented before where I've been off creatine. It's not great. You feel like
Yeah,
garbage.
yeah. So I'll let you know my experience with creatine. So I went from a 220 power clean to a 245 power clean when I took creatine, but it wasn't only that. I also did upper body training. Um, yeah, I did upper body training. I took creatine, and I guess I ate more. I don't know. It was like a combination of a few things. But yeah, not creatine was definitely a huge factor because I didn't take creatine before. Like I was training consistently for a few months, and then I was like, all right, let me take creatine since I've been actually training. Yeah, definitely helps for sure. And you're obviously natural if you take that. So yeah. Next thing is
Wait,
some
actually,
basketball.
yeah, I just looked it up right now.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
'Cause, yeah, so this is straight off of I think Cleveland Clinic when I looked it up. But basically, creatine goes to your skeletal muscles, which then would convert creatine into a compound of creatine and phosphoric acid, or what we know as phosphocreatine. And
Hmm.
that actually helps, yes, with what I said, creating adenosine triphosphate or ATP. And from there, obviously we all know that ATP is then used in order to be able to fuel our cells to be able to do the crazy stuff that we're doing in the gym.
Yes, exactly. But yeah. Yeah. Next up, like I was saying, basketball shoes. You need some basketball shoes. That one's obvious. We should have probably mentioned this one earlier, but you need some basketball shoes. You can't be jumping outside with no running shoes,
Whoa, whoa,
no
whoa,
no
whoa, whoa.
no Vans,
Unless you're
no
Jayden
what?
Suarez.
Oh yeah, unless they're Jayden Suarez, just wear some Crocs or go barefoot. Unless you're just do one of those two things. But you're not gonna get the best performance if you're in Crocs or if you're barefoot. You could be like Dak and you could test a 51-inch vertical barefoot if you think you're a freak like that.
I mean, I've heard functional patterns love stack,
Oh yeah, dude. Yeah, because
but
he's functional.
that's another podcast for another day.
Yeah, that's why he can
Uh,
jump 51 inches because he's functional.
but did you want to talk a little bit more about your experiences before anything else?
Oh, yeah. So I first started training, like training hard on THP. I had these Russell Westbrook. I think they were the one take shoes. I had those for a while. Those worked really well for me for a while, but then they ended up exploding. So Yeah, they didn't explode, but they just like the it just they started getting messed up.
Like the base,
So
like yeah, the base support just kind of screwed over
yeah,
as time went. Yeah.
exactly. So then I had to switch to these regular ass Nike shoes that I have, which could still be used as basketball shoes, but then it's like these are those shoes I just walk around with like just regularly. And then I realized like yeah, like damn, I need some new shoes. So then I got the Way of Weight All City 12s. Never went back. Thing I love
I
those
mean,
things. I actually have them like
nah,
literally like you can
it's
wear those here.
if you buy those, at least I don't have experience with it, but if you buy those, you're kind of set for a while.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like it's not like if you're not a guy who like gets a bunch of basketball shoes, and like keeps them around and be like, all right, which one should I choose today? You know, it's like you only really need one pair for a while, and then after that, you just get another pair and you're chilling. Um, but yeah, not I would be more useful. Like obviously, if you can get like a bunch of different basketball shoes, and you can like, all right, which one should I choose for today? I'm gonna choose this one, and then we'll go like do that, and then it's like, all right, so I used that one last time. Let's use this one, so it's like they don't all wear out like immediately. Because obviously, if you use one shoe for a longer period of time, it's gonna definitely wear out. What's your
Yo,
experience with shoes?
well, first, I'm just gonna say we probably need to get Shunker on here at some point
Oh yeah,
because
well,
that brother knows so much about shoes. Like he's reviewed so many shoes at this point, I think.
yeah, we'll definitely have to see about that.
But in terms of my experiences, now the thing is that when I first started jumping or doing any kind of dunk training, I wasn't even jumping in. I was jumping in the worst shoes ever, man. No, the thing is I was actually very similar to Jayden in some senses. My very first jump sessions were actually barefoot. Like they were inside my
Mm-hmm.
house in those tile floorings that you've probably seen, at least that you've seen one. But
Mm-hmm.
and then I had like really regular ass shoes. Like we're talking, I think tennis shoes or something, right? I was jumping like some tennis shoes for a little bit, and then I eventually got like some regular Nikes, like Nike Precisions or some stuff like that. Those worked for a little bit, but similar to what you had, I I kind of walked in them too, and I did everyday activities with them, and eventually it kind of just wore off. And actually, I was basically jumping with these same Nike Precisions for most of the time that I was training up until my ankle sprain actually. So I was actually doing pretty decent with them. And then when I got my ankle sprain, it kind of told me the lesson that yeah, I need basketball shoes
Yeah,
because
like you need some real like shoes to like intentionally wear to jump in.
like if I didn't get those basketball shoes, I'd be going with really bad traction, which if I'm trying to jump my highest, I don't want to think about slipping or about the PTSD of slipping when an act already
Mm.
happened, right? So
Dog. Yeah, no, yeah, keep going.
because my ankle sprain happened as a result of A, me being stupid, but B, because my shoes were terrible in terms of my traction and grip. So I researched into it. I asked Shankar a couple of questions and stuff because I wanted a shoe that number one, because I'm really poor and stuff. I needed a shoe that had durability with it, that had well, I'm not poor, but I typically can't spend as much money. But it's I wanted something with a good durability timeline, but was also not too expensive for me and had similar qualities to the Way of Wade, but compromise in certain things. The closest thing that I found that was like that, and I guess I concurred with Shunker, which I talked to him a little bit about it, was the AG4s, which I still wear right now. Like that, it kind of speaks to the testament that those shoes are actually super durable, except for the laces. The laces are garbage, but but the actual like shoe itself, like the base support for it, hasn't worn off at all. The only thing that's gone a little worse over time, and it's just kind of the fact of any shoe that you get, is the traction of it, but it's still good. Like you can get a lot of dirt on it, like especially when I do with outdoor sessions, and it's actually still gonna have at least some amount of grip. If you really need that kind of grip or anything, shout out to Grip Spritz, but you can just basically spray it on your shoe, use a towel after it dries a little bit, and you pretty much got them pretty much back at their grip. And I'd say that when I got those basketball shoes, those actually like really helped me in terms of my confidence to be able to even have a higher intent on some of my jumps
Mm-hmm.
because like I didn't have to worry about slipping. I just had to worry about pushing as much as I could on those last few steps.
Hmm. Yeah. Nah, that's very important. Is having like intentionally picking like a shoe to wear. Um, like actually intentionally buying like a good shoe, not just getting some random shoe online. Because yeah, I tried to jump like when my one takes broke, I used these LeBron shoes that I have. They have like a lion like on the back of them. Dude, I almost rolled my ankle in those shoes. I was like, dude, yeah,
Ah, yeah.
I'm not wearing these shoes. These shoes suck.
I think
But
it's
yeah. Oh.
like the thing is like I feel like I struck gold on the first shoe that I got. The only issue with AG4s is that you do need to kind of order like you have to kind of order a size above what you actually are, which wasn't the worst for me,
Mm.
but no, like when I thought about the shoe, I thought I needed good traction, I needed good cushion, and I needed good durability. And
Hmm.
at least an okay bounce factor, but that's not too important for me. Those three things, though, those first three things I said, are the most important things that I needed for myself. And I found all three of those things through the AG4s. That's why I still use them.
Mm. Yeah.
And Shunker would know a lot more about the makings of like every single quality of a shoe. So when we get him
That
on
boy
here at
do it.
some point,
That
that
boy do
it's
his
going to
shoe
be a fun
research.
podcast.
Yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, and then speaking of shoes, next thing, weightlifting shoes, because as we train to jump higher, if we're not one of these people who can actually jump like 1,000 times a week, we're gonna have to do some Olympic weightlifting to substitute for that as like a very good substitute to then get the improve our qualities that we need to jump higher. And to get better at that, we would need some Olympic weightlifting shoes. Not even that, just for Olympic weightlifting, also for because not everyone does. Like Isaiah still doesn't like he doesn't really use Olympic weightlifting shoes for Olympic weightlifting. He uses like some Jordans he has, but also for squatting because it actually does also help to get into a deeper squat because it elevates your heel a little bit. So then there's not as much demand on ankle mobility for that. Pretty much for only those two things, because the Olympic weightlifting shoes do provide a lot of stability for your squatting and um, for your squatting and for when you are catching a clean. It does provide a lot of stability and it does provide that extra heel elevation for ankle mobility. So yeah, that also definitely helps a lot in the long run because you only gotta again same thing. You gotta just buy one shoe, you keep that for the rest of time until it breaks.
Yeah,
Pretty much.
it's actually pretty embarrassing for me that I didn't get my weightlifting shoes until like I think last fall, I think. A lot of the times I've been basically using again, this is really bad of me, but I've been basically using either my tennis shoes or then I eventually moved on to the Nike Precisions and I basically was lifting in those. And I found that when I got into weightlifting shoes, like the ones I currently use right now, the ones I even use right now, they're not even that expensive. Like they're like excuse me, they're like I think Reebok's Lifter PR3 or some stuff like that. And that thing has worked enough for me in terms of providing what I need off of an Olympic weightlifting shoe, which, as Juan said, is the ability to be able to have the extra heel elevation that you get naturally from wearing the shoe, as well as the stability of it. So I no longer have to elevate my heels to be able to deep squat. I can deep squat just fine, if not really well, with just Olympic weightlifting shoes.
Yeah.
And just in general, maybe it's not exactly coinciding with it, but I've had less issues with my lower back and stuff ever since I had Olympic weightlifting shoes because I'm a lot more stable and I don't have to worry about any of the balance considerations I have whenever I'm at the bottom of a squat.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
it's also made like my first and second pulls just a lot cleaner in terms of what I'm doing for any Olympic lifts or any variations that I'm doing. Because a lot of the times tended to lose, or I tended to have like an early rise in my ankles when I was about to go into my second pull, which I personally, for myself at least, I found has been more of a detriment if I do that anytime I do an Olympic lift. So it definitely
Mm,
helps.
yeah, for sure. Yeah. And next thing is some chalk.
You
Speaking
could
of
talk
Olympic
about that. Yeah,
weightlifting,
yeah.
we got chalk for things like RDLs, and if you do some upper body, you could also do it for barbell rows, and as well as Olympic weightlifting, because you are going to need that for the grip, because a lot of the times the grip ends up being a limiting factor, but to make it so you're not kind of compromising, I think that's, I don't know if I'm using that word right. Like rather the difference between that and straps, because straps is also another thing that you can use if you get strong enough to where it's like, okay, like even if I use chalk, it's like it's better if I just do some straps so I could focus on actually getting the muscle. Damn, bro. Hold up. Yeah, so the difference between chalk and straps, chalk will allow you to still use your grip and be able to kind of have a stronger grip, because I don't know if that's really beneficial to have a stronger grip, but I guess it would be better so you're not really having to rely on straps for that.
Yeah, I'd say it's more so being able to still have like the benefits of having some amount of grip when you're doing the exercises, but at least limiting some of the issues that you might get as a result of whenever you're holding the bar or anything. Whereas straps
Mhm.
just kind of eliminate it completely. I wouldn't know
Yeah,
personally because I
exactly.
haven't used either, but that's at least how I would understand it as well.
Yeah, and personally, I would still like to keep a good grip just for like, so it's not like even more limiting than it already is, because rather than kind of using straps, I was just kind of, I feel like there's an analogy that I could probably say, but instead of just using straps and not letting your grip strengthen alongside with the strength of like your posterior chain or whatever,
Because
I
yeah,
personally would rather just use the chalks to still be using my grip on this, like on that.
and it kind of does impact like the turnover as well for certain Olympic lifts that you do, especially if you're doing it off of
Oh yeah,
hand.
and yeah, you
Like you
definitely shouldn't. Like most of the
like
time, more times than not, you definitely shouldn't use straps for Olympic lifts.
like you see it with I mean the best example for it, shout out to D'Angelo. I know he hates him, but the example of this would be Fabian because Fabian tends to use straps on his hangs, and that does lead to the not so great position that he has his wrist in terms of his mobility there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's why yeah, as we said, probably don't use straps for Olympic lifts.
Yeah. So yeah, strap. Yeah, chalk is mainly used for like mainly for the Olympic lifts, but also for like things like RDLs and stuff. RDLs, it would make more sense to use straps since like obviously get the you're trying to get the strength of the RDO. The goal with the RDO is the strength of the posterior chain, but the goal with Olympic weightlifting is to have like that turnover. So straps would definitely limit that. So that's why it's also good to try and use chalk with anything else like RDOs to strengthen your grip, for when you are doing Olympic lifts, and then those Olympic lifts will transfer over to your vertical jump. Okay, next thing is then would be a tape measure. So a tape measure, you need that to measure rims so you know what you're dunking on, because we literally talked about this again last episode, or not last episode but a recent episode, with measuring rims. So you know what you're dunking on, and knowing that where you are at in that specific session. Yeah, pretty much it. And like, so if you ever like post it online, especially, like people know like where you're at too, so you're not like deceiving anybody basically.
And
There's probably more things that you could probably talk about that I can't think of right now.
yeah, so especially if you can, like I'm not saying that you have to, but I would highly recommend it just to understand the validity of what you're using. If you're
Yeah.
using a tape measure, the best thing that you can do if you can is have a person with you so that you know that the tape measure is straight. So that if you have one guy that's handling that and you're handling it, being able to get the exact measurement of it, if you can, what can be even better is having someone at the top, someone in the middle, and yourself there as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whatever can get you the closest in the session that on depending on whoever you can ask, do so. Because you want to have the most amount of validity in terms of the rims that you use. If you do it by yourself, you might do it great, but there's also a chance that you might be off too. And always having those kind of extra cases or extra people that can help you with that is going to go a long way in terms of when you have to validate certain things that you do, especially if you're doing things that haven't been done before. And that's something we've also talked about a little bit from the last podcast. If you
Yeah.
want to watch that, watch the Rim Heights podcast. It's
Yeah.
a good one.
Exactly. Yeah, we definitely went more in depth into that, so definitely check out the podcast. But one thing that I wanted to say was, yeah, a few inches is a big difference. Enough said. Um, so yeah, and if you made it this far into the video, thank you for watching. Joshua, what should I comment?
Um,
Because we still gotta,
yeah, I'm just gonna say, just comment, what have we talked about? You know what? Just say a few inches is a lot.
yeah, comment that. Yeah, a few inches goes a long way for sure. Yeah, some bonus things if you made it this far into the video, or if you're listening. Broomstick is definitely useful for practicing hinging technique, squatting technique, Olympic weightlifting technique, especially. So having a broomstick is actually very helpful in that sense, especially since it's very light. So you're strictly working on like the technique. But then obviously when the weight gets a lot heavier, that's when you got to realize like, okay, so there's some things that I've been compensating with the lighter weights that I need to fix on these higher weights. So yeah, broomstick will definitely help. Next thing is resistance
Well,
bands for.
I can I can talk a little bit on that. Just a
Okay,
small
okay,
bit.
okay. We'll talk about the
It,
resistance bands later.
it, but yeah, besides broomsticks, I've also used like PVC pipes whenever I've had access to them.
Yeah, that's
But
what basically.
I've actually seen a lot of people on our team, our Olympic weightlifting team, back at Cal Poly Pomona. They would basically have a PVC pipe with them whenever they're doing technique days. And I can speak to, I think, D'Angel as well as some of the other guys that when they did those kind of things, right, and they focused heavily on technique, especially first using those things and then moving on to empty bar, it actually helped a lot in terms of getting some of the really small nuances of every single step of any Olympic lift that they did. So it definitely helps. It helped me when I was in a rut in a place where my power clean technique was just so terrible that I just wanted to get it back to at least something that was good. And I got to a point where at least my first and second pull are somewhat good, my, minus some issues, of course, that I have with my arm bend, but it's better than it was before I used a broomstick. But you can go into the resistance bands. My bad. Wanted
Yeah, no,
to
you're good.
just
You're good.
add that.
No, it's no valuable intake. Yeah, so resistance bands definitely help. It's always good to have them, not just for any type of health exercises, whether it's for your shoulder, whether it's for like your hips, your knees, your like things like Darshil, he's been working on his tibial rotation and his internal rotation with things like that, doing mobilizations for your ankle, not just for those things, but also if you ever need them as like a backup for substituting certain exercises, or if you need to do at-home workouts when you can't do it at the gym. So one thing that I did, I had reverse hypers in my training, and I don't have a reverse hyper machine. So what I did, there's this like taller platform that they have. I put what is it called? A mat. Like I fold up a mat and put it like in the corner so it's not digging into my pelvis. And then I attach a resistance band to it, and then I wrap it around my legs, and then I use that as like a reverse hyper. Obviously the load is not going to be like the same because it's like it is a resistance band is stretching, rather than it just being like one load throughout the whole motion. So it's going to be harder at the top end, and like as it like comes down and it shortens, there's not going to be as much tension. But it's always good to have something like that to be able to substitute for any workouts. And I know there's probably with like health exercises, blah blah blah, stuff like that. For actual exercises too, like oh yeah, like things like band walks, things like clamshells, yeah, pretty much any kind of type of like glute med exercise for working on your stability. That definitely helps. Side lying, leg raises, yeah, things like that. Definitely want to get a resistance band for, because those things actually are going to be pretty important for keeping good hip stability for sure. Especially with us people who train to jump higher. Lack of that could definitely lead to knee pain quicker, and it definitely will help manage with that. If there's anything else you want to add, because that's pretty much all I've got.
Yeah, I could definitely add on that. So I think first off, you could, for mobilization cases, at least in some cases I've seen it at least, you could do some of the benefits they get from resistance bands without them. But the benefits of having a resistance band, especially for something like hip IR, for example, right, or hip internal rotation, is that it basically creates a gap in terms of that socket that's there. So it makes it easier for you to be able to access that internal rotation. Whereas if you didn't have the bands, right, you would have to actively think about that as well, or have someone be there to be able to initiate that same effect. And it's not to say you won't get the same effect. You have to try harder to do it. And if we know any person, even the person who's working as hard as they can, right? You want to provide the easiest thing to be able to get the most out of it, a minimum dosage to be able to get something out of it. And secondly, in terms of, I think Juan already talked about the health parts of it, but I've actually used resistance bands also for strength training as well. In terms of, I think I've attached a resistance band before to a front squat, and that's actually helped in terms of creating a lot of like strength in terms of like my concentric outputs, and actually really did help in terms of getting my general strength up with all of my squat lifts. So there definitely is a use case for using resistance bands, whether if it's for mobility reasons, like I am using it for now, or for health reasons beyond that, like band walks, but also using it for strength reasons as well. Like you'll see it even with upper body stuff as well. I don't do upper body with resistance bands, but I can imagine that it can help.
Yeah, I was muted. Yeah, not for sure. Like things like especially warming up, but yeah, there's probably some things like maybe face pulls, like for a substitute again, like substituting exercises when you need it, things like that. So yeah, definitely very important. And yeah, that is the 8+ tools that you would help bolster your progress in jumping higher and to dunk the basketball and to become the best athlete that you can possibly become. So if you guys enjoyed this video, check out our last podcast if you haven't. If you guys enjoyed, like, comment, subscribe. Spotify, 5 stars. Anything you need to say to the people before we leave them? Leave them in the dust. Leave them to watch other people. Leave them to train. Leave them to go to work. Leave them to take care of their kids.
Yeah, I'm just gonna say it because it just happened yesterday, man. Your boy is a software engineer now. I gotta call it.
Yeah!
By the time this podcast is uploaded, because we've been a little behind, I'm probably gonna already be like in a week or two in.
I just killed it! I just killed him! Yeah! Bro, this thing has been biting me. Okay, so first, look at these bites. Like, bro, it's been biting me. It's been biting me, bro. Look at him. Look at him. He's so small, too. He's so small. Look at him. Dead as hell. Look at him. Look at that boy. He dead as hell.
Bro,
Ah!
imagine we had this on the podcast.
Dog. He was small. No, that is going in the podcast. The RC. I literally. That people need to see that, bro. I
Bro,
marked this fool. This guy was
bro, it's
small
like,
and fast. And
bro, it's
like,
like
oh yeah, just to show you how small he is. Like,
the freaking lizard that was in some of the THP videos. Oh my
oh yeah, I
goodness.
remember. Actually, I do remember that. I remember that. Yeah, this is my laptop. This is my hand. Look how small he was, bro. I
Goodness sake.
absolutely murked him.
This is what jump training does. It primes your nervous system to be able to do things
Literally,
like this.
primes your nervous system, improves your type 2X fiber, so you can just stupid, bro. Like literally. Okay, look, watch this. You're not gonna see this coming. You want me to see me do it again? Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. That's what jump training does to you. So if you guys enjoyed, do everything I just said earlier. Hope you guys enjoyed. Peace out.
All right, see you guys.